Hi everyone! Today I have another art supply haul unboxing video for you. I had a coupon for a local art supply store, so I spoiled myself with a few new art supplies because who doesn't love getting new colors or materials to play with? So let's see what I've got. First we have Schmincke Aqua Bronze in the color Rich Gold, which is a water-activated gold pigment especially for watercolors. A set of DaVinci brushes, which are supposed to be special made for Schmincke's line of super granulating watercolors, which I'll talk about later. Then I got a few new watercolor tubes from both Schmincke and Daniel Smith to expand my collection of watercolor paints. I also got new watercolor paper. Recently I bought the coveted watercolor paper from Arches, but because the paper is so high-end, I would never use it for a quick sketch or practice painting, so I bought this small watercolor pad from Canson, and I also bought a new watercolor book by Hahnemühle, which I don't know what to use for yet. So, I also bought the new limited edition from Schmincke's super granulating watercolors called Urban. So now I own all sets of these, but more on this later. I was really excited to try out the brushes because I heard great things about these and already own DaVinci brushes, which I like very much. And the gold pigment is also supposedly very great to work with. But let's see what happens later on, because, well, a little mishap happened while trying this out. The first new color I bought is Daniel Smith's Wisteria. I don't have many watercolors that include a white pigment or are opaque, because I prefer transparent watercolors as they're easier to use for me personally. But this one looked so beautiful, so I had to try it. Next, I got Daniel Smith's Burnt Sienna. I already have a few different types of sienna in my collection, but I wanted to get this specifically for a few reasons. Next, I got Helio Cerulean by Schmincke, as I wanted to see the difference to other phthalo blue shades of PB15. Then I got Transparent Sienna by Schmincke, which is a non-granulating sienna as opposed to the Burnt Sienna by Daniel Smith, which is granulating. But both are made from a different pigment. Lastly, I got Cobalt Azure PB35, which I wanted to compare to Blue Cerulean Chromium PB36 by Daniel Smith, which I already own. Both are very similar and heavily granulating light blue shades. But before I could make all these swatches, I had to break in these new brushes. They came with this protective tube around and with a protective coating on the brush hairs themselves, as the brush is stiff. So we got to clean them first in clear water before being able to paint with them. I also swatched all the colors in my big watercolor sketchbook, which you've seen before, where I keep all my swatches. I also added the Urban watercolor set in my big watercolor book, where I also have a few pages for all of these super granulation watercolors by Schmincke. So, Schmincke recently started to develop new watercolor paints called super granulating colors. I guess because their main line of watercolors mostly features non-granulating transparent colors, which I absolutely love, but they wanted to expand the range, especially seeing how popular Daniel Smith's Primatech line is, which of course is only speculation. But I want to make a separate video on these super granulation colors, of which I own all of the 50 shades, pun not intended, that have been released so far, and some of them are really unique and beautiful to work with. Well, and then it was time to test these new supplies out in a painting. For that purpose, I prepared this sketch, which I drew with pen and ink. But before starting to paint, I first erased the pencil sketch with a kneaded eraser, so the lead from the pencil wouldn't mix with the watercolor paint. I tried to mainly use the new colors I bought, so for the skin tone, I mixed the transparent sienna with the pink from my main palette. For the background, I used Wisteria and the two blue shades. Then I started to add more color to the face. While working on this painting, I quickly realized how smooth the brush was. I could paint one layer without having to dip back into the paint or into the water. I used Wisteria for all of the flowers, but mixed different colors with it. So for example, I tried Wisteria with the blue to get a more deeper purple color. Then I mixed Wisteria with PV19 or Quinacridone Rose, which resulted in a very lovely shade. But my favorite mix is definitely Wisteria with Quinacridone Rose and a little bit of sienna to get this coral shade I used for the last flower. Then I also used the Helio Cerulean PB15 to add shadows to the face. I usually use a warm blue in portrait paintings, but the Helio Cerulean also worked very well. I used the Wisteria and PV19 mix for the eyes as well, but because I thought that was a bit too intense, I also added the light blue Helio Cerulean later. For the lips, I used a beautiful mix of Wisteria, Quinacridone Rose and Sienna. For the hair, I first lay a base layer of sienna, and then I mixed the burnt sienna with the Helio Cerulean PB15, as it results in a brown shade with the right ratio. I like mixing my own brown shades as opposed to using pre-mixed browns, and I will probably make a separate video on that as well. Well, and then it was time to try out the gold pigment, which I was so excited about. Maybe in hindsight I should have let the painting as it was, but let's see what happened. So I put a bit of the gold pigment on my palette and added water to activate it. I wasn't really sure how much water to add. My initial thought was to cover the background with golden droplets or something, but I don't know. And then this happened. I screamed internally and I was quite frustrated, but as a legendary artist once said, we don't make mistakes, only happy accidents. So I carried on and tried to make the best of it. I don't know, it all turned out into a mess or if I like the result. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, as I was quite torn. Even though I only put a tiny bit of the gold pigment on my palette, I had quite a lot left. I think you can use it with less water, so it's a bit thicker and more opaque. I also saw other artists mix it directly with the watercolor paints, for example Wisteria, to get a glittery purple color. I guess I have to experiment more with it to get the hang of it. After thinking a bit about it, I'm still satisfied with this painting, even though maybe I wished I hadn't used the gold pigment. What do you think? Did the portrait look better before? I'm still happy about all the new art supplies I got and the new watercolor paints. Wisteria is truly a beautiful color, and the transparent sienna quite surprised me. It was easy to use and had a very similar hue to traditional burnt sienna. The DaVinci brushes are so super soft and they hold so much water. It felt like I could paint for days without having to dip back into the paint or water. I would definitely be using these in the future a lot. I hope you liked this little art haul unboxing video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and what are some art supplies you got recently. As always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!